The 2-3 Chicago White Sox had a much-needed day off on Tuesday and look to get back on track against Logan Webb and the San Francisco Giants. White Sox will send ace Dylan Cease to the mound to make his second start of the year. Should be a nice pitcher's duel on the south side. It's very early in the season, but we've seen a little bit of everything. Sox fan Drew Bogs joins the conversation in just a moment as we chop up all things Chicago White Sox.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Sox fans, welcome to Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen each and every day. We're free and available on all platforms. Follow us on Twitter at Locked On Sox. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just search Locked On White Sox. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. Hey, I'm your host, Nick Morawski, a lifelong diehard Chicago White Sox fan, recording this podcast just blocks from the ballpark in beautiful Bridgeport. You can find me on Twitter at Nick_GGTB. Locked On White Sox is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Early in the season, Sox had a day off. Good time to just kind of recap. What have we seen so far? How's it reflected the offseason, and what could maybe we look forward for the rest of April? I got diehard Sox fan with me. Drew Bogs is joining Locked On White Sox to talk about all things Southsiders. Drew, welcome to Locked On.
Hey, Nick. Thanks for letting me join on.
Absolutely. You've seen this maybe happen before, where the Sox give you some hope, and then something like the home opener happens. I got a feeling that the Sox won that series in Houston, even though they split. It was very encouraging. There were some bad moments that we're going to get to. But I guess just your initial impressions from that Houston series.
I think that the Houston series was really kind of a changing of the guard, not really of leadership, but of mentality, because the White Sox were just pummeled this entire offseason, where they had the worst offseason of any MLB team, 30th of 30. They just were torn down by every expert saying, why aren't they making moves? All they did was sign Andrew Benintendi and get a new manager. But sometimes just one little change is all that matters. And that Pedro Grifol is just trying to get his system going. That Houston series, we know how much the Houston Astros are a thorn in everyone's side, and how much the White Sox were so vocal when the whole cheating scandal happened, that they really put their heart and soul into it. The first game was on ESPN. You could really see it and feel the pressure, and it felt like a playoff game. Felt like 2021 again in the ALDS, with all the pressure, living and dying on one pitch. And that's how it felt really the entire series. And I bet you, with the fans feeling that, the players also felt that they had to succeed. They had to do everything they could. And then they take the flight. They have the pregame celebration. Eloy's happy and waving to the crowd. Michael Kopech throwing gas in the first inning. And then just the air comes out of the balloon, and everything that happened, 5 home runs given up by Kopech, is just every home run. I was just in shock and in dismay. And I was like, every negative White Sox fan's going to jump on this and be like, this is the real team. This is it. But in reality, it's one game. It's 1 of 62. Pedro said it best. It's not the worst home opener in White Sox history. I think Chuck Garfien said that would be the very first time Comiskey Park, now Guaranteed Rate Field, opened. They lost, I think it was 13-0. So at least they scored a run. There's some positives to think of there.
Yeah, I do think they were just gassed from that Houston series. I mean, that was an exhausting series. Not to make excuses, but that was an emotional series to kick things off against the defending champs in Houston, and you come back and. But I feel like the home opener, the juice from that should have got you going And yeah, we're going to have to continue to monitor the Kopech tipping pitches thing. It sounds like as more things have come out, maybe, he was given some tells. Grifol said they're going to go to the video, and I'm sure we'll get some more information, or maybe not. Maybe they don't want to discuss that too much, but it just, something was definitely off. He didn't have the greatest spring training. And his last start was iffy, but it looked like the Giants saw him in the first inning. He got through that first inning nicely. And then all of a sudden, it was like batting practice. It was a disheartening game. Again, I said it on the previous episode, just one of the worst home openers, and maybe one of the top 5 worst games I've attended in recent memory, just with all the hype and everything. And I don't automatically go back, oh, here we go. This is the Sox that, everybody predicted they're just going to be another 500 team. There are some positives. What are some things that you have taken away from this, first 5 games that you think, this is something we could be building on moving forward here?
I'm a big Yoan Moncada fan. I've been a fan of him since we traded for him. I love his energy. I love his passion. I play his song every time my brother and I go to the game. When we roll through the gates, we play the Yoan Moncada song, and it's just, we blast it and sing horribly. So I'm just really happy that Yoan Moncada is back and healthy and hitting. He looks like he fell back in love with the game. He looked like he was just not really happy. And that World Baseball Classic, while many were saying it's a travesty with players getting injured, which it is when players get injured, but it really just brought fun back to the game for many people. Luis Robert, I know he started off slow at the plate, but his defense has just been there. His bat has just been hot the last few games. And our starting pitching has been phenomenal. Lance Lynn was really good. Dylan Cease, of course, is Dylan Cease, the mustache man himself. As a fellow mustache man would know, the power of the mustache rules. And even just Lucas Giolito, he looked good. And Mike Clevenger, who I was worried about, he didn't have a great spring. He had a terrible last outing, and he just threw that to the wayside and just said, hey, I'm Mike Clevenger, and this is what I can pitch, and just took over. And Ronaldo Lopez looked really good to start the year. I was really worried. I've always been worried about Ronaldo, but ever since he had that surgery to where his vision was fixed, he's improved each and every year, and he's just gotten better. And I think if there's anyone to take over the closer role, it's going to be him. His stuff has just been nasty the last few years, and I hope it continues. He got into a little hot water on Sunday. Big lead. He had the ability to get into that hot water and get out of it, but the bullpen is the part that I'm worried about.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of, we need Garrett Crochet back, a big lefty, strong arm, and even he's going to be restricted. We need Liam Hendricks back, big righty, to end the bullpen, all that energy. I think their identity is missing. And that with the leadership that they're missing their big horse. They're missing Liam, who just gives all that energy and pumps them up and is the most positive person in that entire clubhouse. And so they just need to find that identity. Jose Ruiz needs to get back to World Baseball Classic Jose Ruiz. Jake Diekman back to Boston Jake Diekman, where he's just striking players out left and right, and just get back to White Sox baseball in the bullpen.
Yeah, you hit on it. I think the bullpen was definitely a question mark coming into the season, and maybe I didn't want to be honest with myself as a White Sox fan that it was going to be as bad as what we've seen over these last 4 or 5 games or so. There has been some good. Lopez looked like he was on an absolute mission on opening night, pumping 100, 101. I haven't seen anything like that. And then he brought in Sunday, and it was not a save situation. And I don't know if maybe there was a little mental lapse, like he wasn't, he wasn't as focused because he had a 5-run lead at the time. I know they want to go closer by committee. There's just something about knowing like where your role is as a reliever, as a closer. Like, this is my inning, and the Sox are missing a lot of those identifying roles. If I'm going to bridge the gap to the 8th, or then I'm the 9th guy. And yeah, hopefully we get some of those guys back. And Bummer looked pretty good. A little shaky in maybe opening night. I think he tough with his location, but when he's on, and if he's healthy, he's got some unhittable stuff from his angles. So I want to talk to you in just a moment about off-season predictions that you might have had and how they're possibly being manifested here in actuality in this early part of the year. We're going to get to that with Drew in just a moment. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are almost here, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure. It's super easy to use. Then you can bet on anything from the money line to point scores and threes drained. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Drew, we all made off-season predictions. We read all of the things that were said locally and nationally. Just personally, what were some of the predictions that you had, maybe player or in team, and why?
Yeah, I mean, I thought this team was going to win 92 games. I mean, they went 81-81 with so many injuries, so many singles, so many blown leads, so many things that happened so bad in 2022 that I, as many of White Sox fans, went into the dumps. I was so upset and so mad about the way that the Cleveland series ended in September when they got swept, when I was like, just win one game, just start it and go. And I just thought, they just need a change in leadership, someone who's not going to fall asleep in the dugout, someone who's going to actually not walk someone on a 1-2 count. They needed someone who was going to be an active and an intentional manager. And I thought Pedro Grifol, the change in leadership, would bring them to 92 wins and 70 losses, winning the AL Central. Cleveland's great. The Guardians are they're a machine of hitting, but a one-year wonder can happen. And unless they change the ways that they have been going and try and make things different, teams are going to learn and teams are going to figure it out. I just was thinking optimistically. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go bold and just say they're going to make the ALCS. Just one playoff series win, first since 2005. I was like, let's just be positive and think that. And then they could lose there and I can be happy that that was a good year. But the hype that all of us went into last year was crazy. How it was World Series or bust. Everything was on the line. We lived and died by every pitch, and just thought we're going to win this division by 17 games. And it became a dogfight to where we lost by 11 games. It just needed to be more positive. And I think the positive outlook they had in spring to start the year, the words that are coming out of the dugout, the words that are coming out from the players' mouths is just a lot more positivity, a lot more fun, and a lot more enjoyment of the game. So that's why I picked 92 and 70 to start the season. I even thought, you know what, Yoan Moncada is going to bounce back. I've believed in this guy. I was like, he's going to bounce back. He's got this. And I was like, he's going to be comeback player of the year. And Dylan Cease is going to win the Cy Young. When Justin Verlander leaves and goes to a different league, Dylan Cease is going to take his place.
Let me ask you a little bit about Dylan Cease, because, and I do agree with Yoan Moncada. I thought, maybe he's not going to be the team MVP, but if he is healthy, I think the World Baseball Classic is going to do him well, playing some competitive baseball early. Things are being shaken up with, a new manager and a new coaching staff. The stuff that I heard in the offseason from the Pedro Grifol Moncada interactions of he wants more information. How can I get better? What are the things that I should be doing? Answering every text, like that seemed very positive to me. Dylan Cease, it's so difficult to run it back, and even get in the top 3 in Cy Young voting. I mean, the video is out on Dylan Cease. Everybody knows he's not going to sneak up on anybody. Not that he was probably sneaking up on too many, but now for sure, every team is going to want their crack at the ace, Dylan Cease. Now, he completely proved my theory wrong on opening night when Houston was ready for this guy, and Cease just had, as Hawk used to say, Nintendo type stuff. I mean, it was ridiculous what he did. And Cease said, himself, look, that up there with my one hitter against the Twins, it's like one of my best outings of my career. He's on the hill on Wednesday. He's going up against a pretty tough Giants pitcher. Logan Webb won 15 games, I think, something like that in 2022. Had a sub-3 ERA. It could be a good matchup. I want to see like not just be a one-hit wonder. I want him to be a consistent guy that we can rely on. Do you see that? I mean, do you really think he can go Cy Young? Do you think there's going to be, some hiccups along the way?
I think as long as he's wearing the mustache, he can do anything. I know Jay Kuda on Twitter had a great stat, and it was Dylan Cease without the mustache and Dylan Cease with the mustache. It was like without the mustache, he's got a 4.39 ERA. With it, he's got a 2.17. So, all joking aside, he's got filthy stuff, and when he's locked in and concentrated and doesn't let the moment become too big, he can do anything. A lot of us were there, Game 3, ALDS, Dylan's on the mound at home, and the moment became too big. Yes, the Astros dominate fastball hitting pitchers. And what is Dylan really good with? His fastball. But he's learned really well how to work that slider in, and that's become his best pitch, which if your best pitch can be an off speed and then you can complement with a high speed fastball, you're going to make a lot of people look silly. And just Dylan's mindset that he goes into the offseason is he takes the little bit of relaxing time, goes play some disc golf, goes and hangs out with his cats. It's just the oddity of the man that he is just he's calm, cool, and collected, and he seems like he's grown up a lot from what I've seen from when we've seen him when he first joined the White Sox.
Yeah, I think confidence too. I mean, when you can perform in those big situations and did what he did last season with second in the AL Cy Young, and then even just, hey, short memory. Pitchers need to have a short memory. Hopefully Kopech has one. But Dylan Cease, you did what you did on opening night against the defending champs. It's like, I just hope there isn't a letdown. Well, it's the Giants, Well, look what the Giants just did to Kopech, trying to stay in the moment. And that's where I think a guy like Pedro Grifol can help this team, chunking things up in 5 to 7 days, keeping guys present, recognizing the fact that, you can't win a World Series in the spring, but you can lose one, if you're not prepared. Do you like these consistent lineups that he's been throwing out? This is different here early in the season.
Yeah, it's really different. I mean, it's really good when you have a consistent lineup and going through. I mean, we've all grown up with the whole 05 team. We could probably list the entire lineup from 1 through 9 and the entire rotation. And that's what we grew up with, just being consistent. And it really helps batters understand their role. I get everyone needs to get a hit. Everyone wants to hit a home run. Everyone wants to drive people in, but just situational hitting, it helps develop the entire mindset. When you're bouncing around from I'm hitting first, I'm hitting sixth, I'm hitting second, I'm hitting fourth, it just doesn't make any sense. And just putting guys in spots where they can succeed. Maybe moving Yoan Moncada up a little bit after his hot start, maybe putting him at the 4 or even him at the 3, moving Benintendi down. Benintendi's had a little bit of a struggle. But the consistent lineup has been really good. I know White Sox fans like seeing the players that they love out on the field. And I get that in spring they tried some different things, but it felt like last year it was a different lineup every single day. And you look at the stats, and you're like, it really is a different lineup every single day. It just makes everyone in a better mindset and a better mood, and just know, hey, I'm after this guy. I can help. I know what he's good at. I know his speed. I know his running ability. I know his hitting ability. And just knowing the player before you and after you really helps. And just I wanted to bring this up. The Giants, they're not scrubs. And this team won 107 games just a few years ago. Yep. Took the LA Dodgers to a Game 5 of the ALDS and lose on a controversial strike. A lot of these players are back. Jock Peterson won the World Series with the Braves. He comes over to the Giants. It's just, these Giants, they can hit. They can hit and they can pitch. And Logan Webb, I think, on opening day set a Giants record for strikeouts. He only gave up 3 hits, and 2 of them were bombs, and that's why they lost the game. So it's going to be a tough task tomorrow if they even can get the game in, pending the weather, let's hope. Yeah,
there's some weather for sure here in the south side of Chicago. Hopefully it's early rather than later, but well said indeed about the Giants. And they can hit mistakes. And when you're throwing 93, 94 miles per hour with very little movement at all, like Kopech was doing, I mean, whether you're tipping or not, they're going to be able to crush that. And they did. So Kopech has got to mix things up. He's got to change the eye level. It sounds like he likes his changeup. That's great. Now we got to get those other things all in lockstep. I've been yelling at my TV over the last, 5 games with runners in scoring position. That has been awful. It was awful last year. How they survived to win on Sunday, Game 4 of the Houston series, with leaving the bases loaded with nobody out, not getting a run in and 2 opportunities. That was a bit of a minor miracle. And then you say to yourself, wow, if they could just execute a little bit better, maybe we took 3 or 4 from Houston. Maybe we swept Houston. I don't know. They didn't have a very good offensive showing at all on Monday. That has got to improve. Maybe that's something you're yelling at your TV about, but what are some things that have just really frustrated you so far?
I mean, the runners in scoring position they need to hit better. That's consistently what I'm yelling at my TV about. I think someone had a really funny tweet that said, hey, when the White Sox load the bases, just basically turn your TV off because they're not going to score any runs. I'm like, all right, that's a little negative. My dad and I used to joke for a while when Jeff Samardzija was the pitcher for the White Sox. It felt like he would always have his best stuff, and the White Sox would have a terrible offensive night. So anytime the White Sox can't score, they're putting a Jeff Samardzija on the mound and just giving him trouble, whoever's pitching, to really try and win the game. And it puts pressure on the pitcher. I know it's 5 games in there. It's a struggle. You come out of spring. Some people have had a long month of competitive baseball with the World Baseball Classic. I know that's an excuse, but hey, they're going to figure it out. Runners in scoring position. If you want to be a good team, you got to execute them. But I agree that I think they loaded the bases at least 3 times in Houston and didn't score any runs with any of them. So they just have to be able to figure it out. Hitting the ball through the hole where they need to. The shift not being there is going to help a lot, especially with guaranteed rate being such a good home run ballpark. They're going to score some runs over the next 2 games.
Yeah, they have to figure out a way. Productive outs. You've got to move guys along. You've got to make it count somehow. So we can get those guys and third in a scoring position, with less than 2 outs. Absolutely. Want to talk with you in just a moment about early trends that we've seen that may continue, and then some that might just be temporary as April moves forward. We're going to get to more on that with Drew in just a moment. Today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate Baseball GM. I'm really excited about our new partner and sponsor of today's episode, the mobile game Ultimate Baseball GM. Ever dream of becoming an MLB GM and managing your professional baseball franchise? Your dream can come true, and this game is definitely for you. Manage every strategic aspect of your team, play through the season, and lead your team to glory. You're responsible for hiring the right coaches and staff, scouting and drafting players, navigating your franchise through free agency and all the ups and downs of a season. All this in a challenging and realistic game world. Ultimate Baseball GM is completely free and playable offline. Play on the go as you want, when you want to. Now, of course, is your chance to prove that you can be more competent than our very own Rick Hahn. No guarantee that you'll have as much job security as him, but it'll be fun to have a seat at the table over and over again. Hopefully, you set the market and be proactive instead of reactive. Locked On White Sox listeners get 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code Locked On. So just head to the game store, check it out. Download it at probaseballgm.com, scan the code, or look it up on the app stores. That's probaseballgm.com. Ultimate Baseball GM. Start your dynasty today. All right, Drew. We've seen some positive trends. We talked about Moncada and Robert's defense. I don't even know. You can't. There aren't words. They haven't invented words that I think can accurately explain how happy I am, and I think all Sox fans, with what he's been able to do out there in center field. What player or players have you found yourself maybe defending the most, perhaps early on in this season?
I mean, I don't really have to defend, but I just want to I completely forgot to even mention Yasmani Grandal has been much improved this year. Didn't even know, many White Sox fans didn't know that he wasn't even playing healthy towards the end of the year. Felt like he needed to get back, rushed it. He looks a lot healthier, looks a lot slimmer, even quicker, even though many fans will joke that they can beat his home to first run time. But he looks healthy. He also looks happy. But I know a lot of people are going to try and defend him. But we love Yaz because he gets on base, and I hope he keeps doing that. Eloy Jimenez is a player that I'm going to constantly defend. He didn't have a great World Baseball Classic. I think he only had 2-3 RBIs, a couple big hits, nothing big. Had an okay spring, and just had a really slow start for this year in these first 5 games. The power hasn't been there. The approach, he just looks like he's not there. But again, it's going to take a little bit. I think the consistent lineup of him hitting where he's hitting is going to help, knowing that he's the big bat in the lineup. It used to be a Abreu spot. Now it's his spot. He's got to be the cleanup hitter to drive those runners in. I'm always going to defend Michael Kopech. The career that this kid has had, I hope he's younger than me when I say kid, but the career that he has had has just been otherworldly. I mean, he comes out, has a great very first game, has to have surgery on his arm, delayed, comes out, has a great season, then it shuts down for COVID, takes that year off. Personally, completely respect the way that it had to go. Comes out of the bullpen in 2021, looks fire, is dominating, and then they say, hey, we're going to put you in the starting rotation. Has to adjust, has to learn how to get back as a starting pitcher. And then this year had a terrible spring, had a terrible start to the year, has to adjust to a pitch clock. His entire mechanics and his entire career has just been change after change after change after change. And no one likes to change, and it's never easy. So I will defend Michael Kopech. I know everyone was dogging him all over on social media. Well deserved for how he played, and he was the first to tell you that he stunk up the joint. But Michael Kopech is going to get back on the horse. He's going to start throwing some mean fastballs. That changeup is nasty if he can utilize both those 2 pitches and get everything going. But again, it's the change in the mentality. That pitch clock for his release, he's one of the pitchers that was pointed out of his slow release. He now has to worry about runners stealing on him more, because stealing on him used to be very easy. Now it's even easier than that. But I'm going to defend Eloy and Michael Kopech till the day I die. Those guys just have massive talent. They're just fiery. They're fun. They're awesome to watch play. They're great people. They're going to come out of the hole that they're in and show everyone why they're still on the Chicago White Sox.
Yeah, I think for Kopech, it's this prove it year. It's like, this is the year. You know, we have to see it. And to a lot of the things that you had just mentioned is why I kept defending the Chicago White Sox, I think, during the offseason, even through spring training, when I would talk to, other folks from different fan bases, or even within the White Sox fan bases. Just look at this lineup. Look at the potential in this lineup and what could happen. I know could and if are scary words in our fandom, because of what we've seen over the last few years with injuries and frankly, players just not living up to the back of their baseball card, so to speak. But Eloy Jimenez is a great one. Yasmani Grandal, good mention. I mean, he had a pretty good Houston series. I was really impressed with his bat, and I thought, that's the result of the shift being banned. And he looked very comfortable, and I feel like you can be relied upon in opportunities when we need somebody to drive the baseball. I think Kopech will figure it out. I know he's got to come to terms with, talking about the whole change thing. He's not a flamethrower anymore. He's not going to throw 98, 99, 100 miles an hour. He's got to be a pitcher. He's got to learn to pitch. He's not going to blow people away constantly, especially if there isn't any movement. So I think he's going to be okay. We've seen this happen before from different Sox pitchers where it looked like somebody was figuring something out and they regathered and, they were able to put up a pretty decent start after. Before we have to say goodbye, bullpen, I think, has been, obviously much talked about. I don't know what solutions that we're going to have right now. Are there certain guys that you want to see maybe in different situations? Is there a way you would line it up? Not necessarily by what we've seen before, but moving forward.
It's kind of, you have to put them in situations to where you see what they do. And I think that was a lot of what Grifol did in Houston. You're not going to get a tougher assignment than the Houston Astros when you come out of the bullpen and just figuring out who does well in which situations. And everyone says, well, just look at the tape in the past year. Every year is different. Players are learning different things or trying different things out. And I think that they're going to figure some things out in the bullpen. Jose Ruiz, when he's on, he's on. He can dominate. I trust that man. Yes, everyone will dog him that he had a terrible start to the year. Jake Diekman, everyone will say, oh, he was the only addition at the trade deadline. Whoop-de-doo, we got Jake Diekman. When he's got his movement and his pitches, he's a really good pitcher to get out lefties, especially in lefty situations when they need it late in the inning. Kendall Graveman, I know they're doing the closer right committee. It's either going to be him or Ronaldo Lopez. Kendall just needs to be put in as more of a setup role right now. I know last year, specifically the Rockies series, that was one of them last year to where Kendall Graveman lost that game and he was put in the closer role. And I was like, I'm not a fan of Kendall Graveman closing games. Jimmy Lambert, just put him in a series to where you can get him to have 2 innings, not cupcake innings, but just to help his development, help him move forward, and go from there. And then we've already talked about Ronaldo Lopez. Yeah. For his career, whenever the game is in hand, he kind of relaxes and doesn't know how to get that intensity. But then when it's close, he comes up big and he knows the mentality that he needs to put out there. He just needs to keep that mentality every single time and go from there.
Yeah. That's, I think, where I keep going with this issue of like, just announce a closer and just say, this is our guy until, we have to refigure things with Crochet and hopefully with Hendricks because of that mentality of getting in that zone of, okay, I know I got it, like, because there's a lot of prep that goes into it. I think Hendricks used to talk about his whole preparation, knowing like he could be pitching, in that 9th inning. So I think they'll figure it out eventually. But I think this first week or so, it's, who can perform in what situations, what do guys have, what do they like? And maybe there's some communication going on between, hopefully pitchers and Cats and Grifol of maybe this is how I would like to be used moving forward, because even Joe Kelly, he was touching 100 miles per hour. He can have some nasty stuff, I think, in the right situation.
Yes.
So
Joe Kelly and Bummer are ones that need to step it up as well.
Yeah. Drew, this was an absolute pleasure. Really appreciate you giving some time to Locked On White Sox. Where can we find you on social media?
You can find me Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. I'm all over. Twitter handles right below. There will be a link in the bio to where you can find me on all social media. I'll be tweeting White Sox all the time. So if you're not a White Sox fan, enjoy the tweets.
Drew Bogs, you can find him at Drew Bogs, BOGS 623 on Twitter. Drew, really appreciate it. I'm sure we'll be talking again throughout the season.
Yeah, thanks, Nick.
You got it. Folks, thank you so very much for making this podcast part of your daily routine. You can find the Locked On White Sox podcast absolutely everywhere you find your podcast. We're on Twitter at Locked On Sox. You can find me on Twitter at Nick_GGTB. Hey, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Pass it along to other White Sox fans in your life. I do appreciate that. After you've consumed this podcast, your second listen, check out the Locked On Fantasy Baseball podcast. Win your league by listening to Matt and Dom every day as they bring you the best fantasy draft strategies. Find Locked On Fantasy Baseball wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On the next episode, I'll recap Dylan Cease's second outing of the season as the White Sox look to bounce back against the San Francisco Giants. Really appreciate you making time for the Locked On White Sox podcast. I'm Nick Morawski. Until next time, go Sox.